2,000 years, the world has repeated one story without hesitation. A story where Judas stands alone in history, not honored, not understood, but condemned. The betrayer, the traitor, the downfall of Christ. But what you've been told and what actually happened are worlds apart. What if the narrative you inherited was the surface, not the core? What if betrayal was not a fall, but an initiation? For the real Gospel of Judas, not the one we inherited, but the one buried in silence, reveals what truly unfolded before Christ was handed over for crucifixion. The Gospel does not whisper, it laughs at certainty, shatters assumption, and rewrites everything you believed about Jesus and those who walked beside him. Because in this ancient text, Jesus does something shocking. He laughs at the disciples' devotion, not out of cruelty, but the laughter of one who sees beyond illusion. A cosmic humor directed at those who worship the Demiurge unknowingly, still blind to the true source. And only one disciple dares step forward. Only one meets his gaze without fear. Not Peter, not John, but Judas. The greatest paradox in Christian history is this. The one branded a traitor may have been the only who was truly awake. In this video, you will discover why Jesus calls Judas apart from the others, why he reveals to him secrets hidden from the world, why he names him not a traitor, but the 13th Daimon, not a demon, but a divine intermediary, a being who moves between light and flesh. We'll also uncover why the Gnostics believed Judas was not the betrayer, but a chosen one tasked with handing over the body, so the true Christ could ascend and act the world named betrayal, but was actually awakening. This isn't just another account of what happened before the crucifixion. It is an unveiling of a truth buried, silenced, and withheld for generations. Because what you're about to hear doesn't merely turn the official story of Judas upside down. It changes the story of Christ, of salvation, and of your place within it. To truly understand why this gospel is so dangerous, why it was buried, suppressed, and nearly erased, you must step backward into the early centuries of Christianity, into a time before the church had one voice, before doctrine was fixed, before belief became law. The world of the 2nd century was not unified. It was a storm of competing interpretations. Not one Christianity, but many Christianities. Communities scattered across Egypt, Syria, Rome, and Asia Minor, each holding a different portrait of Jesus. Some worshipped the miracle worker, some honored the resurrected Lord. But there was another group, smaller, quieter, a lineage of mystics called the Gnostics, who didn't just believe they knew. For them, salvation wasn't found through obedience or ritual, or worshipping an external god, but through gnosis, direct inner awakening, a remembering of where consciousness truly comes from. And here lies the first fracture between Gnosticism and the church. The Gnostics taught that the God of the physical world, the God of the Old Testament, was not the true source. They called this God the Demiurge, ruler of matter, creator of form, architect of a cosmic veil that binds souls to ignorance. The true God, the source, existed beyond this world, beyond flesh, beyond time, in the realm of pure light known as the pleroma. And according to the Gospel of Judas, Jesus did not come from the Demiurge at all, but from Barbelo, the eternal womb of creation, the first emanation of the hidden Father. This revelation alone would shatter Orthodoxy, but the second revelation is even more radical. Not all souls are equal in their ability to awaken. In Gnostic cosmology, humanity is divided into 3 types. Helic souls, who are born of matter and cannot attain gnosis. Psychic souls, not psychic, as in fortune-telling, but soul-centered. They stand between matter and spirit. They can awaken, but only through revelation. And pneumatic souls, who are born of spirit, for whom gnosis is natural and inevitable. And here is where Judas becomes more than a name. He becomes a symbol. Most of the disciples in the Gospel of Judas are psychic, capable of devotion, but blind to gnosis, clinging to ritual, worshipping the Demiurge without knowing it. Only Judas perceives the origin of the real Christ. Only Judas sees Barbelo, the divine womb of light from which Christ emanates, the first thought beyond the material God. Only Judas stands and speaks the truth others fear, not because he is better, but because he is capable. This gospel was not written for the masses. It was written for the unshakable generation, the Scythian elect, the few who could bear forbidden knowledge, seekers just like you. And when proto-Orthodox leaders like Irenaeus discovered this text, they recognized the threat instantly. Not a different doctrine, but a different Jesus entirely. A Jesus who laughs, who teaches in riddles, who selects a single disciple for the one task no other could bear. A Jesus whose mission was not to suffer, but to be freed from the body. This is the Jesus neither Rome or the Church could contain or use for control. And so the Gospel of Judas was condemned by the Church as early as 180 AD, labeled heresy, sealed away, forgotten. For nearly 2 millennia, it vanished, until its rediscovery in Egypt around the 1970s, and its publication finally in 2006. Now we hold in our hands the text once buried, silenced, and almost erased from memory. Not a myth, a manuscript, not hearsay, but a voice resurrected. Because burying a seed does not kill it. It waits. It gathers strength in the dark. It roots itself deeper. And when the time is right, it breaks the surface. That time is now. Now we enter the heart of the text, the moment where history fractures and Judas steps out from the villainous shadow the world placed him in. The Gospel of Judas opens with a scene almost unthinkable in later Christianity. Jesus laughs at the disciples, not in mockery, not in cruelty, but with the gentle, knowing amusement of someone watching children worship a God made of clay. They celebrate the Eucharist, bread and wine, believing they honor the Father, but Jesus sees what they cannot. I am not laughing at you, he tells them. You do this so your God will be praised. Their God, not his. A line that would have shaken the foundation of every church wall if it had survived unburied. Because according to this gospel, Jesus is not the Son of the God who made the world, but of the source beyond it, beyond law, beyond form, beyond death. The disciples stare, confused. None of them understand, none dare ask what he means, except one. Judas steps forward, fearless, illuminated, and speaks what no other disciple can bear to say. I know who you are. You are from the immortal realm of Barbelo. With that sentence, the entire gospel ignites. This is not the Jesus of empire or church. This is the emanation of the first thought, the light before creation, the voice born from the womb of infinity. At this moment, Judas sees him, truly sees him, not as a man, not as a prophet, but as a being who wears flesh like clothing. And Jesus recognizes him in return. This is the moment of initiation. Jesus tells Judas, you will be cursed by others, you will suffer greatly, but you will rule over them. Not rebuke, not rejection, a prophecy. Judas is chosen, not for glory in this world, but for the burden of history. Jesus then separates him from the others, not to elevate him into comfort, but to entrust him with what no one else could carry. Because the 11 follow the God of this world, they worship form. They lead the many to the altar of the Demiurge, passing down ritual from priest to bishop, to minister for generations yet unborn. But Judas is different. He is not hilic, bound to matter. He is not pneumatic like the highest Scythian elect. He stands in the middle, psychic, perceptive, capable of awakening, able to understand, able to act. And so Jesus reveals to him the mysteries of the kingdom, not to save him from grief, but to prepare him for it. Judas is shown visions, dreams of his own stoning, of a house filled with radiant beings, the pleroma itself. He longs to enter, but Jesus denies him. Not all can cross. Not all are born of the unshakable race. And yet, Judas will play the most critical role of all. The others cling to Jesus' physical form, but Judas is asked to release it. "You will sacrifice the man who clothes me," Jesus declares. Not betrayal, but liberation. Not treachery, but initiation. Jesus' mission is not to remain in flesh, but to break through it, to escape the architecture of the archons, to ascend beyond the heavens and reopen the path for those who remember. And only Judas can turn the key. This moment changes everything. The crucifixion becomes not a tragedy, but a passage. Not defeat, but ascension. Not betrayal, but sacred duty. History remembers Judas as a villain, but the Gospel of Judas remembers him as necessary. Because to understand why this text could not be allowed to survive is to see that a liberated Christ has no cage, and an awakened Judas has no sin. If the Gospel of Judas ended there, it would already rewrite history. But it goes further, deeper into territory so theologically explosive that even some Gnostics feared it. Because once Judas is initiated, Jesus unveils the structure of the cosmos itself. He tells the disciples that each of them has a star ruling over them, a brilliant metaphor for the archons, cosmic governors who bind souls to cycles of ignorance and rebirth. When they hear this, the disciples beg Jesus to save them. But he answers, "A baker cannot feed all of creation under heaven." A cryptic line, yet devastating. It implies that salvation is not universal. Not everyone can awaken. Seed cannot sprout from stone. The Gnostics believed humanity was not one kind, but three. The Helic, born of matter, blind to spirit and bound to flesh. The Psychic, born of soul, capable of awakening if revelation reaches them. And the Pneumatic, born of spirit, children of Barbelo. Gnosis is their inheritance. The Sathians, who preserved this gospel, called themselves the immovable race, the unshakable lineage of spirit. Jesus speaks of a defiled race, a barren rock where nothing can grow, and the reader understands the implication. Judas may be awake, but he is not Sathian. He is psychic, capable of vision, yet barred from the ultimate ascent. And here the gospel becomes almost unbearably human. Judas tells Jesus of a dream. The other disciples stone him, and he sees a radiant house filled with chosen souls. He longs to enter, but Jesus refuses him gently. No mortal may enter that house, only the unshakable generation, only those born of spirit, the pneumatics, may cross. You can feel the fracture. Judas sees the light, but cannot live in it, awakens, but cannot remain awake. He's chosen, yet denied the throne. This is the tragedy wrapped inside exaltation. Then Jesus gives Judas a name the church would try to erase, the 13th Daimon. Not demon as in evil, but daimon, spirit, intermediary, guide, one who moves between realms. You will be the 13th, Jesus says. You will be cursed, but you will rule over them. What kind of destiny is this? Judas will bear the scorn of nations, the hatred of centuries, the weight of betrayal burned into history. But in the realm above the archons, in the 13th Aeon, he is exalted. This text unveils another heresy, Docetism, that Jesus did not truly suffer on the cross, that his body was not flesh, but a garment of illusion, a vessel he asked Judas to open. Judas is instructed to hand over the body, to sacrifice the shell, while the true Christ ascends untouched. Not execution or defeat, but transcendence. It's easy to see why the church did everything to bury this text. A Christ who cannot be controlled is a threat. A disciple who acts with divine sanction is a danger. A gospel where betrayal is the highest obedience is intolerable. Irenaeus, the hammer of heresy, attacked this gospel directly in 180 AD, not because he misunderstood it, but because he understood it too well. It was a spiritual rebellion, a Scythian blade aimed at rising Orthodoxy, a declaration that priests and bishops lead multitudes astray before the altar. In this gospel, Judas becomes a mirror. The world sees a villain, but the Awakened sees the initiate. The world sees betrayal, yet the Gnostics saw obedience to the hidden will. And now you must ask yourself, which vision do you see? Because your answer reveals not the gospel, but your soul. The forbidden Gospel of Judas held words only a few were ever meant to see or understand, because knowing something is not the same as being transformed by it. Knowledge is a spark. Awakening begins when it touches your life, because knowing the truth about Judas is not really about him, or even about Jesus. It's about what it reveals in you, not as history, not as doctrine, but as an inner mirror. Judas is more than a name in Scripture. He is the one who sees what others cannot, who follows a truth even when the world condemns it, who accepts a destiny no one else is willing to bear. Perhaps you already know that feeling. A moment when your understanding no longer fits the narrative around you. A moment where you sense something deeper, something no one else could quite recognize. Maybe a quiet knowing inside you has begun to stir, not loud, not dramatic, but a subtle pulling towards something real, something you haven't yet found the language for. Let that thread move through you. Where do you resist being seen for who you really are? Where have you softened your truth to avoid standing apart? Where does your soul nudge you toward a path others may never understand? Not every question needs an answer. Not every knowing needs permission. Awakening is often quiet, solitary, misunderstood. It asks you to grow beyond the version of yourself created for approval. It asks you to notice where your life feels scripted, where ritual has replaced awareness, where habit has replaced presence, where the mind moves but the soul is absent. Judas stepped into a role that cost him everything in the eyes of the world, yet fulfilled everything in the eyes of spirit. Your journey will not mirror his, but its essence may feel familiar. A shedding, a seeing, a remembering. You may feel old beliefs loosening. You may sense a turning away from what once felt safe. You may feel a new honesty rising, not to rebel, but to awaken. Sit with it and let it unfold without force. Some doors open only when you are still enough to approach them. Let this gospel reflect you back to yourself, not to justify Judas, but to recognize the place within you that yearns to see clearly, even if clarity separates you from the crowd. Awakening is not about being right. It is about being true, and truth rarely arrives with applause. You are here because something in you recognizes this, a memory, a stirring, a spark. Let it deepen, let it widen, and let it become what it has been waiting to become. If this resonates and something in you wants to go further, to move from knowing into remembering, my free ebook, Escaping the Illusion, a Gnostic guide to mastering reality, continues this path with practical methods for inner awakening. You can download it for free. The link is in the description. We began with a question. What if betrayal was not a fall, but an initiation? A gospel where Christ laughs at ritual, where the disciples unknowingly praise the Demiurge, where Judas alone perceives Barbelo and is chosen to do what no one else could. Not a villain, not a traitor, but the 13th Daimon. Exalted in spirit, cursed in history, guardian of the doorway that led Christ beyond the archons. The Gospel of Judas does not ask you to worship Judas. It asks you to understand him, to reconsider the narrative handed down for centuries, and to see the possibility hidden beneath accusation. It asks you to look at the world and yourself differently, to recognize that awakening may not look like holiness, that truth may feel like exile, that the path of the initiate is not always praised, but it is always seen by the one who matters. Perhaps you felt that tension in your own life, the pull between belonging and knowing, between comfort and truth, between obedience and awakening. If so, then Judas is not just a figure from history, he is a mirror, a reminder that sometimes the soul chosen to open the door is also the one the world refuses to forgive for doing so. You don't need to decide what you believe today, just hold the question. Let it move in you. Let it unsettle the comfortable places. Because once a truth like this enters your awareness, it does not leave quietly. If this teaching stirred something in you, a spark, a memory, a fracture in the old narrative, let me know in the comments. And if you're ready to go further, to move deeper into the hidden books, the forbidden gospels, the layers beneath scripture, then like this video and subscribe to the Gnostic Eye, where each week we uncover another fragment of the unseen, because this is not the end, this is the threshold, and the next gate waits for those who can see it.